Hi, everybody. Welcome to glorious Northumberland is where we're at. We are in Alnmouth for a tale of two halves, wonderful halves too. The first, the story of the smuggler's bones. And it's an amazing story about the most famous smugglers in Britain at the time. And they came from this part of the world. Want to introduce you in the second part to one of the world's greatest and best known pirates who was never here. So how are we going to cope with that? Well, I'll tell you about that a little bit later too. But let's introduce you to the crew. First of all, we got Kenny, who's with us. And 2 seconds ago, totally out of the blue, literally just before we started, a young lad came up called John Robson, who had been at some football event with Liverpool. But the thing is, just by passing in the street, he came over and said, "You're Alan Robson, aren't you? This is for you." And he gave me a genuine clay pipe from the 1800s. How cool is that? And it's got engravings and stuff on it. It's got a heart on the side. Beautiful clay pipe. And he just knows the kind of stuff that we do. And he found that on a midden and an outfall that's a little bit further down, where lots of old-fashioned stuff gets caught in the mud, and when it rains, it uncovers things like that. And he's cleaned it up. I think that might be a bit of poo on the side, I have to say.
And then he's jumped in the house to come and watch us.
I know, it was just lovely. So John Robson, thank you very much. Originally from Amble. He's living up here in Alnmouth, which is lovely. But that was just a beautiful, beautiful thing to start with. Now, you may wonder why we started here. Well, this is something that buses and cars drive past every time anybody comes to Alnmouth. And if you have a look at it, it's just a fairly straightforward war memorial. On one side, it's World War II. And on the other side, it's the First World War. And the plaque on the front says it's for both World War I and World War II. Now, for those of you that live here in Alnmouth or who've travelled here or been down to the beach, or maybe you've played on the 9-hole golf course, which is ancient here, you probably go past this and you're not even look at it. The reason that we're doing this tonight's story in two parts is one part is about Boomer. Now, Boomer is 3 miles up that road there. So how can we do a story about 3 miles away while we're here? Well, Boomer, the name of it, and you can probably see it on the sign in the distance. I don't know whether you can catch it, but there should be there you go, Boomer in the distance, 3 miles up the road. Once you get through Foxton, it's a nice little cycle ride for somebody. Boomer, you might think it's a modern name. It isn't. It's actually Bullsmere. It was called Bullsmere because the people who lived there kept bulls that they used to give out and hire out to farms to look after the cows. And they would also protect them with pit bull terriers and bulldogs back in the day. And they had wild animals to keep the tallyman at bay. But Boomer, the monument, the link between the two is Boomer got taken over by the Royal Air Force, and an awful lot of their missions to protect the northeast coast meant that the Germans knew that they were there. So they sent bombing missions to go past the industrial centres of Sunderland, Teesside, Newcastle, all the way out to what is still beautiful countryside to bomb Boomer, because they wanted to stop the planes from defending it, making the invasion that Hitler wanted so badly possible. And because of that, they peppered this northeast coast with bombs, and that leads to something that you rarely see on a war memorial. If you look at the side here, it gives you the name of a whole list of civilians who died in bombings because they were trying to knock out the Royal Air Force. So I thought it was actually really nice of them that they give the name to people like Jane Gibb and the Stantons who died. It's just lovely that because they were fighting for the war effort just the same as everyone else. Now, we're going to walk. We've got an awful lot to tell you about because Boomer was the capital of the whole North Country. From Birmingham up, it was the capital of smuggling. Odd noise in the distance there. Also, Boomer is the place where William Farr, who was king of the gypsies, lived, and it's also where he died, and we'll tell you about how he died a little bit later. But let's get across the road safely and securely. We just watched a bus. If you want to see something truly amazing, just watch a bus try and get around this, because it looks like, oh, it's easily big enough. It really isn't. No. And for buses to come around here is something quite amazing. The fishing boat in Boomer is like the smuggler's den, and there's no harbour in Boomer. So all of the booty was landed at Alnmouth Beach. In Boomer, it was only about fishing, where all the boats were either anchored at sea or they were dragged onto the shore. And like today, oh, just nearly collapsed. Nearly just
boom.
Yeah, I know you missed it. You're not going to get the money. Simple as. But no, they still specialise in Boomer, the fisher folk, in what they did in the 1100s. They were famous for crabs, lobsters, and sea salmon, and that's still the case to this day. Now, if you stop here just briefly and you look down that road, the road that lies ahead, can you stick a light on it? It is Northumberland Street, Alnmouth, and that's the one that I know you can't drive down there. You always used to be able to go straight down to the coast, but they've zoned it off. But down there's the schooner, which has a bit of a haunted history and is so bodacious about it. It even has haunted hotel written on the outside. Indian restaurant next door, I've noticed. It's relatively new. There's also two other pubs there that have been there from the 1700s, which is amazing. And even when you look behind you, you see tiny little niches like that. Beautiful looking bits of history that have obviously been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's so much to tell you about it. From the very beginning, Boomer was a den of thieves. And remember, they were loading or unloading their stuff on the beach in Alnmouth because they couldn't put it down on the beach just at Boomer. And it's strange. It seems strange how over the centuries we glamorize the criminal in many cases, transforming them into romantic figures, when at the time they terrorized and terrified ordinary people. Highwaymen, you get this image of Adam and the ants, the dandy highwaymen, but they were murdering, they were raping, but they're still pictured like devastating and charismatic. And this was usually pretty far from the truth. And smugglers kind of benefit from the myth rather than the fact. Most of them were violent, brutal, and desperate people who wouldn't let anybody stand in their way. So tonight, we're starting in the 1700s when the government were increasing taxes to pay for the war in France. Many ordinary things that most people would take for granted were suddenly too expensive and they were bought illicitly. Whiskey, gin, wine, spirits were all subject to such massive duty that it was cheaper to buy it from your local smuggler. And here on the northeast coast, from Boomer all the way down to Alnmouth, this was the major port, the major place where the smugglers existed. They used it for over 140 years, and the Boomer men, as they became known, they had areas that they smuggled from the Scottish borders down to Yorkshire. providing the cheapest, good quality items. They had entire chains of distributors marketing for them in Newcastle, Sunderland, Durham, York, Leeds, Harrogate, Sheffield even. And known merchants would take their stock and sell it at hugely inflated prices. And in the villages of places like Wooler, Jedburgh, Alnmouth, Yetham, and all over the Cheviot Hills, smaller dealers would like franchise it out to create an unquenchable demand. They specialised in goods from their fellow rogues in France and Holland. And you know, Tony, there was one of the things about the smugglers that a lot of you might not know is back then, because this was relatively poor, which is why the authorities left it alone. But if you think about what commodities we're talking about booze. Salt became very rare. Salt, now you'd think there's the sea, it's full of salt. However, it became a rarity, and the smugglers here decided they were going to start doing one of three things, and this is amazing. First of all, they said, well, let's buy loads of salt. This is like Kenny D's marketing plan on how you... This is what Kenny does. He sees something cheap and he sells it dear, which is brilliant. But that's exactly what they did back then. They bought tons and tons and tons of salt. Nobody could get their hands on it. But the boomer men had warehouses full of tons of it. There's a place up the road here, about 4 miles away, where there's a thing called Salters Lane. And it's called Salters Lane because it led to a warehouse where they kept all of the salt. In Gateshead, Salters Road, have you heard of Salters Road? The boomer men from this tiny little place had a warehouse in Gateshead. And that's why Salters Road gets its name, because it led to the warehouse where the salt was kept. So fortunes were made. Farmers had boomer men knocking on their door saying, we want you to create us a hidey hole. Now, the word hidey hole, you think, probably as old as grass. Boomer men created the words hidey hole. And what they would do, they'd ask farmers to build an additional wall. So you got a farmhouse, there's the wall, then you'd have another wall built like that, so that it looked like if you're in the house, you see the wall, but behind the wall, they could keep salt, barrels of brandy, whiskey, rum, gin, and the tallymen couldn't get to it. It was really clever. There was a farmer who said that he wouldn't create a hidey hole for them. And they nailed him to a tree and they just let him die. And they told everybody, do not touch him, do not try and remove him. And he stayed there for something like 25 years. And every other farmer in the area had a hidey hole. And if they didn't want to build it onto their property, because many didn't, they'd dig a hole in their field, a big square, they'd line it with wood and sand behind the wooden paneling, and they'd keep all of the stuff, the salt in there. And it was all over this region, and every farmer did it. Now down here, this area that you're looking at here should be haunted as hell for 1,000 reasons. Because
the light outside out the corner of the eye, but it's actually the lighthouse. Look, the lighthouse.
Now the lighthouse in the distance, if you could just click on that, is it's actually in that direction, and you'll see it just in the distance. You'll see a little light clicking on and off, and we'll be telling you more about that particular place in part 2, because it's all to do with pirates. I mean, not smugglers, we're talking serious pirates. Now, do not forget, we go, hang on, I've got to, listen. Did you hear that?
What was that?
I've no idea. It came from down there. It was like a, woo. The birds are doing us proud tonight, it has to be said. But this whole area, all the way down to the beach, which is probably a good 300, 400 yards, you'd say, down there, there's 1,000 stories. You know, we picture smugglers as jolly rogues, you know, and They certainly were. They were armed to the teeth with pistols and swords and bill hooks. They wouldn't do like any of the heavy lifting even. They get other people to do that. But do you know when they landed? Oh, you've got to check out down here. I saw something dark just behind.
There.
Yeah, it was beside the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something by the tree as well. What are smugglers got to do with ice cream vans? Any idea?
No.
Well, when smugglers arrived, the rich people, all they did was turn a blind eye because they wanted the booze and they wanted it cheap. However, what about the ordinary man and woman in the street? They wanted their booze and they wanted it cheap too. So the smugglers, any of the goods that they couldn't sell to taverns and rich people in their houses, what they would do, they'd get a wagon, well, not a wagon, like a hand cart, and they'd drive the cart through the town with a fiddler on the back, playing his fiddle to attract people to come out of their house to buy the illicit booze. And it's believed that ice cream men play their little tune to click into that old thing from 300-400 years ago that the smugglers used to do. How fantastic. So next time you hear ice cream man, they're copying what smugglers did right here in our own backyard. I keep feeling stuff from down there too. It might just be me, but there's a car coming down. Watch yourself, fellas. Just be careful.
How can you win a badge?
Oh, that's a good idea. That was the plan. I was trying to point you towards my rather beautiful Night Owl's badge. If you share this particular stream, and please share it with as many people as you can, everybody that shares goes in the hat, and one of you this Sunday will be named on the stream as the winner, the recipient of only our second official Night Owl badge. So that's what you can do.
And sign card.
And you get a little sign thing from me as well. But yeah, we'll all make sure we sign it for you. But fascinating. Just all of the stuff that's here. You know, the stuff that you don't know. It's happened right on your own back door. It's that kind of thing that really gives me a buzz. And I must say, down here, looks great. And we're already getting kind of odd noises from down there too. Let's crack on and see what else we've got down here. So we mentioned all the hidey holes. Many a legend came from this part of Alnmouth, especially down in this area. There used to be a man called John Harker from Boomer, and he ran a tavern on Northumberland Road that we've just passed. The tavern's called the Red Lion. It's still there on the main street. He had a falling out with his illegal supplier, and the smugglers informed on him, saying that he was in charge of a gang bringing in gin and spirits from Holland. So the Boomer men planted goods in his stable. He was arrested and sentenced to hang. But as soon as that happened, he decided, well, hey, we're not having that. I'm going to inform on all the other genuine smugglers. So he was still in prison, but he made his promise. And on the day, oh, hang on.
I've seen the branches moving down there. I don't know.
I think I just heard a frog.
Is that what it is?
Yes, it sounded froggy.
It sounded,
It's definitely something. It is a swamp down there, though, so they could live down there. Do you think?
yeah. But you see, this used to be the ground where the all of the illicit goods would come up from the dock. In fact, at one time, the sea came up this far. This was sea before it was bog. So obviously the sea on its way out. But Harker, on the day that he was due to give his testimony, was found in his cell with his skull shattered. And some say that along this area, overlooking the sea, is where his ghost can be seen. And we'd love Harker to make an appearance tonight. Also, oh, there you go. This is more like it. If you can imagine the sea just coming up to here, you know, literally. And now it's swamp and marsh. And the story of Woolly Far, the king of the gypsies. he got caught. He got trapped and captured by the Tallymen here. He was trying to escape them. Oh, hang on. I thought it sounded like a girl's voice. Could have been Birdie. If there's a bird that sounds like a... Ah!
All the birds have suddenly just stopped.
Did you notice?
All of a sudden, they just all
Everything.
stopped.
And they were crazy.
That is strange.
Why would you do that? But no, the ghost of Harker should be around here. But there was a story about a Dutchman called Albrecht who decided he was going to come in and try and steal a bit of the action from the boomer men. And a guy called Henry, who was a boomer man, said, "You're not selling..." Sorry?
I just saw something on the pitch glow.
Glow?
Wasn't that sign there?
Could be.
But it's not glowing.
There's a sign there. Look.
Ah.
I don't know if it's that.
Well, anyway, this Dutchman came over. Oh, this is wild. We're going to get stuff tonight.
Tell, can't you?
Yeah, you could feel it.
Oh, what's that?
We're going to go down amongst all of this stuff. It's the first time we've ever done a beach-related thing, and we're certainly going to end up on a beach where so many things happened. But this guy, Albrecht, he owned a tavern in Roker in Sunderland, which ironically to this day is still called the Smugglers. And he began to bring in his own stuff, and it ended up in a duel on the sea frontier. The boomer man called Henry decided to walk 10 paces and then you turn and fire your pistols. But Henry ignored this, and with 2 pistols, he turned around and he began following Albrecht 1 pace behind. And on the 10th pace, the Dutchman turned around and he was shocked to see Henry's 2 pistols right in front of his face. And before he could react, there were 2 mighty blasts, and he was shot with such force, they say the entire top of his head exploded. The tavern becoming property of the boomer men, and their empire was growing. They moved further south, Marsden Rock. Tony, I'm sure an awful lot of the night owls might remember we went to Marsden Rock and we drank from the chalice behind the bar. The chalice behind the bar was the last thing that a boomer man held in his hand. He was a boomer man in the bar. The Tallymen came in, shot him, and the chalice was cursed. And I washed it out and had a drink from it, and I'm all right up till now. But how amazing it was a boomer man. It was boomer men who dug out those steps in the sea wall next to the Marsden Rock so you could get off the beach carrying a couple of boxes of booze. So this links to so many places where you guys live or have certainly been. I don't know about you, but once again, the birds have just completely left it. And I don't fully understand.
No. That's it, and it coincided with that voice. Like a weird voice.
There was certainly something strange.
Eerie, isn't it?
It is.
This is quiet.
Absolutely. Now, Tony, if you can just look over there, if you follow the land down, you see the land in the distance, Kenny, higher than that, right in the distance. Do you see how it falls down towards the sea? It just gets lower and lower and lower. Right at the very end, there's a cliff over there. Mm-hmm. And the smugglers got hold of this family, a merchant called Spencer. He'd refused to buy from them, and they thought they could make an absolute fortune if he would, because he had influence. So he dragged the family to the cliff top over there. There stood his wife, an elderly mother, and 3 children, and their 2 pet dogs. The smugglers demanded that he allow them to provide all of his stock. He refused, so they threw his 2 dogs off the cliff and they exploded, burst on the rocks below. Then they grabbed hold of his mum, slapping her to the ground, and a boomer man put a pistol into her mouth, guided her to the edge of the cliff, and as she reached the edge, he fired, sending her cannoning up into the air and then down to the rocks. Spencer then agreed to do whatever they wanted and worked with them for 4 years until he then did a deal with the tally men. And 5 were killed in battle, 18 hanged, 11 imprisoned for life. So he got his own back, you could argue. Oh, hang on. They say he got his own back. The boomer men never let anything go. And eventually, they'd come and they burst into his house. His wife was heavily pregnant. She was raped by the gang in front of her husband, and the children hacked to death. And Spencer was forced to eat the heart of his 7-year-old daughter. Then he was dragged behind a horse up to the end, to that cliff that we've just pointed to, all the way off there in the distance. And they made him walk over the edge of the cliff into nothingness. And to be honest, the people at the time said he was so crazed over what he'd seen with his family that he welcomed death by then. So many things happened in this part of the world. And there's got to be stuff here. There's got to be stuff tonight. Keep your eyes open, everybody at home. And don't forget, share for the badges. And spread the word. Do not forget that part 2 will be for supporters, and we would love you to join our ever-growing bank of supporters. I mentioned the king of the gypsies. His name was William Farr, F-A-A, Wooly Farr. And he had a boat called the Aids. And the tallymen once chased that boat all the way down to Robin Hood's Bay and back to Boomer. And Wooly Farr jumped off the boat and ended up in a battle with the tallymen, who hacked him with a sabre and cut 3 fingers off his hand. Then he leapt down into that boggy ground that we've just passed, not so far away. And, oh, that was weird. Did you see that? It was just over here beside the tree. I don't know whether it was just the way the torches maybe hit the tree, because it sends shadows in all kind of directions. It just looked like there was something. Whoa!
Your voices.
I don't see anybody, do you?
I heard something.
Maybe a smuggler on his way to sell his wares. But anyway, Wooly Farr was captured. He was hanged outside a tavern as a warning to all the other smugglers, and there's a rhyme about it. Canny old Willie Farr of Kirk Yettam, the lad who brings us all we need, was slashed and lost his fingers, and all we watched him bleed. A canny lad, a canny sinner, a whiskey man and a ginner. Another told of Willie Farr's love for the ladies. Poor Wooly Farr, the Yettam soul, took Catherine Dodds to his hidey hole, romanced that lass for 7 nights, and still winn't marry her. The Boomer men also had a last hurrah. Tony, just bear with me a second, because we have to show. Hang on. Boom. You see that building there? No, the one that my torch is on, Kenny.
All right, yeah.
You see it?
Yeah.
That used to be the Methodist Church. Yeah. Now, John Wesley, who was the man who created Methodism, he came to Alnmouth And while he was here, he said, "It is a beautiful small port, yet it is filled with wickedness." Because obviously, yeah, you could not deny there was a lot of bad stuff going on. And John Wesley came here, and that was the church that he came to visit at the time. So many just short stories. You know, there's a pointy church with a pointy steeple just a little bit further over. During the American War of Independence, John Paul Jones, the famous privateer, came here. Remember, this was the sea right the way up here, and he fired cannon shots at the church. So important was Alnmouth back in the day. But the story that we've come to tell you about from here, the main one, is down on the beach where we're heading now. We're heading down to, it's part beach, it's part greenery, and it's just around the corner here. The story is that the Boomer men had one last hurrah in Sunderland with a man called Rob. If your surname is Rob, this could have something to do with your family, because Rob made a deal with the Boomer men. They went down to Roker with him, and can you see that? There's just a strange little something moving next to where you are, Tony. Look around these sides of Tony.
I'm scared to move now.
Oh, God. Can I get on the camera, though?
So if I spin
is
around,
that?
nothing's going to be there, is it?
I don't know. It looks like you've got a black version
Thingy around you.
of it's almost like that advert they used to have for porridge where
That's
you'd
the one.
radioactive, but it's dark. That's odd. Walk on, Tony. That's just a weird.
Isn't it crazy in a little place like this? You find things. Look all this down home.
Golf course in England. No, absolutely. We mentioned that. Yeah, real early. Don't know what they'll have the date on it. What, 1869? Yeah, early doors. Yeah, absolutely.
We don't know, do we? All the stuff we
Stuff on our doorstep.
Yeah.
That's what makes it all the best. Amazing area for stuff. But no, this guy called Rob. If your name's Rob, please pay attention to this, because this guy Rob decided to lure the Boomer men down to Roker, and they tried to threaten him. He lived on Ocean Road, and 12 Boomermen were taken by the tally men because he dobbed them in it, and they took him down to the soft sand of Alnmouth, where the golf course now is. So, Tony, this is exactly where they brought him. But you got to remember, this was soft sand. And you see the edge that goes down. There's a high bit, then it goes down. That would be where the sea is. And they took these guys here to the sea. They buried them up to their neck in soft sand, leaving their heads exposed. And this area at the time was known as the 12 Heads. And when the tide came in to wash over them, and they left it there until all of the flesh had been eaten away by crabs. And they say that so many people died along this stretch, so many deaths were here. That's the reason why there's so many crabs that people catch off the coast, because of all the death that had gone on. Beyond that, a few other things that you need to know about Alnmouth before we go on. We've got an amazing second story of piracy, as if we have already had amazing history. Alnmouth, and this was back in, I'm hoping to get the dates right, 1736, right here, the Scots piled in and massacred the entire place. Every man, woman and child chased down to the beach and were massacred on the beach. The same beach with the 12 Heads, which will now be under grass, I'm guessing. 40 years after the Scots hit us, and I might have the dates wrong, it might be 1578, In fact, it wasn't. Let me get my dates right. 13th century. Then 40 years later, the Black Death swept across and wiped out everybody in Alnmouth again. And 100 years after that, there was very few people living here except fisher folk. And the king said, "Oh, how is Alnmouth?" And one of his aides said, "My lord, Alnmouth has been depeopled." And we're looking for their spirit tonight in this lot. But we're going down to the meaty part right now. And I think I've got my dates all the cock. I really do. However, I will be... Oh, there you go. It was 1336, the Scots. 1348, the Black Death. And the other thing about this place that just turns it into a fascination, you know, it's posh with a golf course now, and it's a lovely place to be, and it was built on poo. It was built on poo because it started making money when Alnmouth and the boomer men started importing guano, which is bird poo and bat poo and what have you. And they started importing it, and they realized that farmers, if they put the guano on their land, tripled the amount of productivity they got from their crops, and they made a fortune. They tripled, you know, the stuff that they could get out of the ground. So everybody wanted guano. So boats were coming over, not with gin, not with salt, not with gold and silk and all the stuff you presume. They carried tons of poo, and farmers paid a fortune for it because they knew once it was on the land, they could triple, quadruple the amount of profit they made. And they all did it, and Alnmouth was suddenly a rich and wealthy place to be. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Right, this is the path, I think. Are we right? We're heading down. We're heading down, so let's get to the nitty-gritty. Gloves are going on. Oh, this is serious. Right. I just think this is a kind of, it's heavy on story. I know that, and there's not really much I could do about it. But let's...
feeling here that there's going to be something down there, though, don't you?
I really hope so.
This is when I want people at home just to make me a cheese and ham sandwich, and I'll come across there.
Oh, a toasty. It's a toasty for the night, isn't it?
Cup of tea.
Cup of tea. Yeah, make one now.
It is bitter.
Send us your address. I'm on the way. No mind this ghost.
It's actually colder than it was when we were... And I know somebody said when we one of the people on our amazing... Oh, and incidentally, thank you for stars. I just saw someone earlier sent us 400 stars. I've only just found out what stars are. They're like a pat on the head and a nip to the bottom. And it's a lovely tip. So thank you very much. We sent us 400 stars. So thank you very much for that. What you spotted?
It's just reflection.
The sun is shining.
Looks like a misty.
Very
foggy.
Yeah,
over there.
Well, it's the sea fret is all what the second...
Oh, that's moving. What the fuck is... Sorry. What is that?
Sorry for the sweary there. There's something moving.
What's moving really fast?
And it's... Can you see the light in
I've
it?
just seen...
Take our torches off.
There as well.
Can you see it?
What the hell
My
is
eyes
that?
are... Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
It's stopped now.
What the hell is that?
I hope the people at home can see it.
I got a fright there. I properly got a fright there.
It's...
That moved fast.
It did.
What is it?
Could it be somebody with a
there.
torch? It's not a torch, is it?
Yeah, it's gone too fast.
Fox.
Look, it's moving again.
The dog behind us, absolutely.
Hi,
Evening. If you hear heavy breathing, it's just the dog.
What the hell is that?
I've no idea, but
It's moving again.
Look at that.
Wow.
What the hell is it?
are you picking it up, Tony?
I think so. I can see it in my eyes and I can see a little thing on the screen.
Torch away, can you see it?
No.
There it is. Yes, can.
Oh.
It's a torch. It's a torch.
No, it's...
Isn't it a torch? Look, is it? Look at how these are torches. Maybe a torch.
Whoa.
It's a torch. It's got to be a torch.
Can we lift up here? Like a stone or something.
Come on, let's just.
Oh,
Let's do our thing. There's a green area that's just up here as well that we have to visit at some point, because we know, I don't know whether we can do it, you know, up where the cars are parked around the top. Can we get down there?
Yeah, but you have to go
Out
over
and
there,
round.
yeah.
Okay, let's do that then. I don't understand the speed of it more than anything.
The speed wasn't the speed of a walker, though. It didn't
No,
look like it.
no, not at all. Unless he's on a horse.
You know, every time you see an island and there's a lighthouse last night, you always...
Well,
Yeah,
that lighthouse we're going to tell you
Yes.
all about a little bit later on
the
as
bell in the
well.
background.
A bell? Look at Alnmouth, how beautiful it looks, mind you, Tony. I don't know whether you can just focus back, and because you know it's changed so little over the years. A lot of those old buildings are the same now as they would have been back in the day. That's what a lot of people would have seen. I know they put new windows in and all the rest of it, but a lot of the buildings are antique and old. Now, you know, I mentioned Rob because over the years, that's to the beach. Is it the beach we go to go around to that? Because it's over there, the Boomerman story, and it's over there, which is the story of our pirate, which we'll get into. Yeah, that's it.
I think we're going straight on, though, aren't we?
I
And then
thought
we're back? No.
No, I think
Or
we're
beach
going.
first, yeah.
We go to the green. It's that green bit that we need to get to.
Yeah.
If that's what Tony says, is that the way to that
yeah.
green patch next to where the cars were?
Yes, we can go this way,
Okay.
along the beach.
Warning.
Yeah. No bathing.
No, do not even paddle.
I always feel like a plodge when I'm anywhere near the sea, mate. I have to say, even at night time. Now, when we first arrived, the tide was up to there, wasn't it? You see how wet the sand is down. Did you hear that? Not that I can see. Maybe rats. Well, we're not going in the sea. The sea's a good way out. It was right in when we first arrived. You know, I told you that story about Rob and how he dobbed the boomer men in, and 12 of them ended up getting hanged. Yeah, we're going along there later. There's a lot of remnants from World War II up that way, but we want to be in the dunes essentially here.
It's just up, straight up this way, and then there's a kind of a pathway up.
Right. Amazing. No, well, you know how I told you that the boomer men never let anybody get away with anything? Well, this guy, Rob, thought he'd done we know where it is. You don't need to.
We're back.
Right, sorry everybody. We just kind of cut off. You know, whenever I'm on a beach, I always look at stuff like this, but it's buried deep, and you wonder, was that just a tree that's fallen, or was it part of a ship? Where's it been? Why is it there? But the Rob story, I keep going back to the Rob story because it's important, especially if your name's Rob, surname's Rob, 2 B's. This Rob guy caused the death of all those boomer men. Boomer men never, ever let anybody get away with anything. And 3 days after the final hanging, Rob didn't turn up for work. When they went to his house, they found his entire family had been murdered, and Rob was lying in bed. His insides were slopping around the bed, and there were 2 knives, one in each eye. And that's how it was. So the boomer men always, if you went for them, they'd always come back at you harder and stronger. Is this the route in?
Yes, you can get up that way.
You see the things here, these things, you see the big lumps of concrete? Do you know what they are? They're tank cubes. You know, I mentioned that during the War of Independence, when England was... Oh, hang on, is that a pair of pants? Is it pants?
Well, let's hope there's no one naked over the other side.
Well, it just gives you a bit of input as to what else has happened here. These things here, if the Germans had landed their tanks on the beach, because everybody was expecting the Germans to invade, they put these things in to stop the tanks getting over them. They're tank cubes, tank traps. They thought the French were going to invade during the Napoleonic War, and they put gun batteries on the top of these with cannons, and they were replaced with these big lumps of rock in World War II. So there's all sorts of things going on. And it's up here, if we can get up here. Can we get up, Tony?
Yes.
Can you manage it? Oh, dear. Oh! I said, can you manage it? I couldn't get my leg over. But I'm there now. I'm good. Yeah, it's this whole area down here. This is where we need to be. Because this is the area that was... Do you remember I told you before that in Alnmouth, in the early days, 1336, as we have now discovered, the Scots came down. This was the area that they chased all of the people from Alnmouth and their small wooden homes. They chased them down to this place here. And this is where they were all massacred, wiped out. They were unarmed, most of them. Men, women and children. They just wiped the whole town out. They asked the leaders of the town, are you for Scotland or are you for England? They said, we're for England. And they wiped them out. This is...
Quite new, isn't it?
It is. But this is the place, if you're going to get something, it'll be here.
Need the necromancer for a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think this is the place for it. Definitely.
What the hell?
Jesus. Did you hear that?
I heard it.
That's somebody playing games with us or what?
Who knows?
Could be somebody watching just now.
You don't know?
We don't know, do you?
Well, I tell you, I think... Sorry?
Do we head that way?
Do we? I think we'll stay here for the moment and we'll necromance. Let's do a little bit of that. Kenny, do you want to double? I'll keep giving you all of my clot. Can you take that as well? Thank you, Matt. And let's... But we've got voices there, clear as day.
Something.
We got a something.
I think so. Dogs howling, but...
Wasn't dogs howling.
No, that wasn't. I don't
Didn't sound
think
like
so.
a dog, maybe a bloody wolf.
We've come to where a lot of you were killed. Speak to us. Speak to us. Speak to us. What do you want to say? People are listening. Shh. Yourself. We've come for you. Murdered. Did you lose your life here? Men, women, and children. Come on. Speak to us. Speak to us. Or are you the people who... Or did you kill here? Did you kill here? Yeah. And then there were three. That's us. And then there were three. At least last time I was called illegitimate on one occasion in an arsehole. Pardon my language. At least they haven't insulted me yet. Are you English or Scottish? This is your chance to let everybody hear. Take it. Take the chance.
Oh, what's that? Oh, it's a rabbit.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a rabbit. Oof. Just see it moving. It's jump down there. Great rabbit.
The thing is, you're so heightened looking for anything.
Just jump down there.
Last chance for now. Die. Is that what happened to you? You died here? Did you take anyone's life here? Right. And can we just apologise? And again, sorry for Kenny swearing.
It wasn't me.
Earlier on, you dropped one when you got the shock at the thing.
Yeah.
My apologies for that. Again, I mentioned what was said last week on the show, and I repeated the word, which was I shouldn't have done that either. So my apologies. Let's see where it takes us next. Yeah, there's World War II things all over the place. I'll take the little one back if I may. Thank you. That's so hanging on to everything. So here we are in the area where, and you got to remember that the beach. This was the beach, and I know at the present moment it looks like scrubland, and it is scrubland. And there's been banks of sand built up and a lot of grass and additional areas added to it. But this was the place where all of those good people, the entire town, small town though it was, they lost their lives. They were massacred here. So surely we've got to be able to get something from down here. Now, the second part of tonight, we're going to be heading for that story of the pirate to the place where his men did some incredible, violent and pleasant things. And it's the darker half of tonight's trip.
Do you feel heavy here? Like your breath heavy and stuff?
I actually feel all right so far, but I think we'll be tested a bit in the next places that we go. I think we've got to finish this off before we split, Tony. Let's get into this and let's have a good look. Tony McShane, of course, on the camera, and there's pathways up and pathways down that people use to walk their dogs, and they've got no idea what they're walking them on, because why don't people know the history of what's on their own backyard? And next time you come out, you've got, and I know that's what a lot of you guys do, you pile down to places. I know a lot of people have visited Otterburn on the back of our trip there, and I'm sure you'll come out here to Alnmouth too. Whoa!
Oh, I see a shadow.
You see it?
Oh, there. It moved.
No, can you see it? Look.
Yeah.
Oh, look. Do you see it?
Yeah, just there.
Yeah.
You got that, Tony?
You see it? Are you picking it up, Tony? Black. Left of the tree.
I think so.
There.
What the hell is that?
Gone.
No. Actually, no. Yeah, it's gone. Ah, damn. Did you catch it at all, Tony?
I think so. Just the screen's a bit small, but some people have seen. Some people, yeah, saw black. Saw an orb.
Just, you know, when the thing about doing this kind of stuff, it's not when you catch a glimpse of something so much, is when you go back and look and it's still there. That makes it just a different ball game completely. I'm going through some of the thick undergrowth here. You can probably hear the grass bouncing off my jacket. Oh, blimey, it goes on forever up here. Goes on forever. Look at this. How amazing is this? Oh. If you're looking for a place to come and do your own hunt, this is definitely the place. There's some more of those blocks, the tank things we were talking about. I don't know how effective they would be. You would think that a tank would go straight over the top of them, maybe. I mean, you've got to remember, they would be stuck in the ground. There wouldn't be grassy outcrops around them. That'll have grown since. What have you spotted?
There's blackness in the trees across there. When you go across it.
Yeah. I'll try and merge with your beam.
Right. See if I can see it again. There. So quiet.
I'm just surprised you've even seen a rabbit. It's like everything's dead down here. And I know we mentioned that this is an area where the massacre took place, but maybe we should expect places like this to be, you know, to feel dead. Oh. Let's just stop. Let's have some silence and see what we get. Just see the train in the distance. Did you see that?
Just such a vast area.
But you wouldn't think it, because when you come down, you go to the beach and you see the beach, and if the tide's out, you see a little bit of sand. Oh, it was just like there was somebody's head poking over the top over there, Tony. It's breezy, but nothing's moving. Have you noticed that? I can feel breeze on my face, but I'm not getting any. Nothing's moving. Absolutely. What was it? A bang?
Was it like a clang? That's more like a clang.
I'd love to think it was a sabre or
It was definitely a clang.
cutlass or something. God, that was so good. Just the last time we said something like that, if you remember, we were in that train place.
Yes.
And then said, wouldn't it be great if we heard a train? Oh. And then we heard, sheepers. Can I make that up?
Definitely a clang, yeah.
Just look at how still things are. It's not natural. Look, I mean, this is grass. It should be waving in all directions. And look, even when you move it, it just... I think it's time, maybe, Mr. Hollywood McShane behind the camera, tell everybody what they need to do to follow. What was it? Oh, bird. When you're wide open and you open yourself up to try and pick stuff up, sometimes things that are minor seem magnified. We've got to be aware of that too. However, Tony, how do people follow us? How do people continue to the next part of the adventure?
Well, if you're on Facebook, just hit the Become a Supporter button, and part 2 will start very, very shortly.
Right.
And if you're on YouTube, just hit the join button and it'll be on in a few hours' time. Just got the address on the screen right now. So, Jesus. Don't know if that picked up.
Did you hear that?
I heard.
It was like a snake.
Loud as anything.
Did you hear it?
Yes, whatever that was.
Right. We are going there now. Join us in the next bit. We're heading in that direction now, and then we're telling the full story of the Pirates of the Fog. Alan Robson's Night Owls Live. Come with us if you can. We'd love you to.